Next one, and this is a pretty heavy subject, actually. Jocko and Leif, thoughts on cops being ambushed. What should police departments be doing to prepare, especially with no command support for training? ISIS is an American law enforcement role in battling this terrorism. We've been training active shooter a lot. So this is actually a conglomeration of a few questions, but the basic question is thoughts on the cops being ambushed. What should police departments be doing to train for that and prepare for it? And then how do civilians fit into that picture? And what can civilians do to help? Leif, the horrible shooting that took place in Texas.
Horrific stuff. And certainly we lift up the families of those lost in our prayers, and the entire, the entire police force there in Dallas, in Baton Rouge, and across the country where they've lost their brothers. I think, first of all, we have tremendous respect for law enforcement, for the boys in blue, and whether it's police departments, sheriff's deputies, federal law enforcement, they protect the home front, and we have to have that. We have to be a nation of laws, and without that, we've got complete lawlessness. And so, I think Americans need to show appreciation for their police departments and for their law enforcement officers. We can't do that enough. We got to thank those folks. I think as far as this is just another example. When we're talking about the police ambush, this is another example that, just as we talked about in that first question, darkness, right? The evil that's in the world. There are some evil people that celebrate this evil like it's a great thing, and I think. There's just no justification for the kind of horrific stuff that we've seen. These ambushes on police officers, and so I think police need to start. You're already seeing police that are getting long guns for the forces that didn't have them. A lot of them had them, but maybe they didn't have access to them or couldn't get to them quickly. They're going to need to have those long guns. Where if someone's targeting you with a rifle and all you have is a pistol, it's not good for you. That's not a good scenario.
For those of you that don't know anything about guns, like Echo, the difference between having a rifle and a pistol is night and day. I mean, let's just break it down. A pistol, if you're a good shot with a pistol, maybe. If you're a great shot with a pistol, maybe you're getting out, what?
50 yards.
You're a good shot with a rifle, and you're out to 800 yards pretty easily. Now, on top of that, you got a pistol. A pistol round will stop when it hits something. Sometimes pistol rounds stop when they hit regular windows on cars. A high-powered rifle is going to rip through the doors of cars, no problem. It's going to be so. There is a massive difference between being out in the street with a pistol and being out in the street with a rifle. So luckily, not luckily, but they are starting to arm the police for these scenarios that you're going to get in. I remember the first patrol I went on in Iraq in Humvees, and we hit a steel hedgehog, right? The little obstacles that Americans had put out. I don't know if they'd left them there or there'd been some problem. So I'm driving along, all of a sudden, boom, we hit one. It was my vehicle. And I thought to myself, I just hit an IED, I'm about to die. But our vehicle gets jacked up, we're like propped up, and everyone poured out in the street and like took up security. But everyone's out there with their little M4s. And you feel, even, because we wanted machine guns and we never went out again without, 2 heavy machine guns per Humvee because we wanted to be ready to rock and roll. So that's the same feeling you're going to get rolling out with just a pistol. So that's number one. Number two, the police departments, they got to start looking at tactics, at urban combat tactics and how to handle these situations. How to cover and move, primarily. How to cover and move. It always is shocking to me when I see when I see people not using the use of cover. When there's gunfight or potential gunfight, or even if there's not, that's one thing in Ramadi. Like when you're walking down the street in Ramadi, you don't walk down the street, you're moving from cover to cover. And if you're a police officer, let's at least be near cover. So if shooting starts, you can get in cover. When I see arrests happening, actual arrests happening, they're trying to get someone to stop, and the police officers are standing out in the open to try and tell someone to stop, don't stand out in the open, stand behind cover. Now there's a complexity there because you want the person that you're trying to stop to be able to clearly identify that you're a police officer, right? But let's make the error on the side of being behind cover. So if that person does draw a gun, you can be able to react them from a place of cover. Because if you're the difference between standing behind cover and standing out in the open, if someone starts shooting at you, if you got cover, you're good to go. That's literally you're good to go. They have to hit a tiny, tiny little target of whatever's exposed to you, part of your head. Whereas if you're standing in the open, they're gonna hit you. So I think those tactics need to start looking at the individual tactics of doing arrests, and then they need to start looking at the larger group tactics when you have either one, you got your partner out there. How do you operate together? How do you cover and move together? What's the best way to react to these scenarios? And then furthermore, when another group, when other police show up, how do you then quickly organize into elements that can operate together like a military unit? And I know that's going to make some people scared, but they shouldn't be scared of that. When you're in a gunfight, you need to use tactics, gunfighting tactics, and those come from the military. So they should be able to operate in pairs. They should be able to operate in elements and grow until you get to a point where you can handle these situations. And that's going to take a lot of training, and that's going to take money, and that's going to cost. And I was talking to some of my friends that are police officers, and as a matter of fact, one guy I just met, really good guy, really fired up, jiu-jitsu player, of course, and he said the amount of training that they get is very, very minimal. So, for example, a regular police officer, oftentimes they don't have designated times for training. They don't have times to say, okay, you're going to work 40 hours this week. 4 of those hours are going to be training. And that's completely wrong. You should have mandatory, real good training, force-on-force training, and that's what Leif talked about earlier, where you're shooting live or simunition rounds or paintball rounds at each other, so you're getting used to those stressful situations. So, because I'll tell you what, you square off with a guy one time and he's got simunition, and you stand out in the open and don't get cover, and he pulls out that gun and shoots you 3 times in the face with simunition, and then the next time you go again, you're going to be behind some cover. It's going to happen. And that's what we want people to do.
You know what's interesting about that is there was a real emphasis on live fire when I first came into the SEAL teams, and a lot of the instructors that were putting us through training had not had any real experience yet, any real combat experience. And so we still had those folks that were saying, well, we're going to focus on live fire because that's more important and that's better training. And the reality is it's not. It's actually worse training because you're dealing with paper targets. Yep. And it's simple. It's like either they're armed, there's a weapon in their hand, or they're not. Shoot them, don't shoot them. Did you hit the target? Did you not? So while it's important to be able to operate with live fire, and that's great, so much better to operate against a role player. Now you go into a room, you're like, the guy's moving. You can't see him. Is he shooting you? Is he not shooting it? Is he? Maybe he isn't armed, but if he's bum rushing you, and for us, if a guy's yelling Allah Akbar and running at you, he's probably a high suicide bomber threat. So he's getting smoked.
He's getting smoked. Jack.
So it's I think police forces have absolutely got to make time for training, but they got to put those realistic scenarios in there too. And our police officers, and as Jocko said, we've got many, many friends that are in law enforcement. Some of them former SEALs that we worked with that have gone that route now. And they're in very difficult scenarios all the time. It's one of the hard things about close quarters combat is our instructors always tell us, like, don't game it. Don't game it. Meaning, and I talked about with a kill house, how you can change the walls and maneuver around. When you're thinking in your mind, I know what I'm going to see when I enter this room, that's what you generally see. And so it's a difficult thing. You got to make sure. It's easy to get really amped up. Your heart rate's going, and you're like, because there's pressure on you. Got instructors there, and you want to make sure you make your shots and make good decisions. And particularly as a new guy, when you haven't done that before and you're going through it for the first time, and so if you're gaming it and you're already envisioning what you're going to see, that's how you react to it, and you end up. I mean, I remember I shot a target, and the sergeant's like, "Babin, look at that target." And there's nothing in the guy's hand. There's no, I thought I saw a weapon on the target, and I hammered the target, with rounds, and I'm looking at the holes in the chest of the target.
You vaporized a hotel.
Did you engage hostiles? I vaporized hostiles. To quote the movie Navy SEALs. But that kind of thing can really get to you. So, and you only learn that when you only realize how easily that can happen when it happens to you in training, and when they change those things around, so that you go in there and the hallway's different and you're moving a different direction, and it causes those kind of issues. So
what you're talking about is you want to train for the unexpected. That's what you want to have happen. And the things that you see in combat are crazy. The things that cops deal with, go watch YouTube. I said this last time we talked about this subject. Go watch YouTube and see the crazy things that people do out in the world. And you got to be prepared for all those things. And how do you prepare? You got to learn to think, and you got to learn to think quickly. I was talking to one of our guys from Task Unit Bruiser the other day, and it's I'm not going to say his name, obviously, but he's one of my favorite guys who did that deployment with us, came back, and I think it was either his next deployment or the deployment after, went to Afghanistan and did a lot of incredible stuff in Afghanistan. And again, I put him through training for that. So I was running training, and he was just a great guy, stepped up. And I said, hey, man, what was because I didn't fight in Afghanistan. I said, what was the difference between your deployment to Afghanistan, where you got in a bunch of gunfights and got after it, compared to what it was like in Ramadi? And he said, the biggest difference was in Afghanistan, when things are happening, they're usually at a distance. You're looking across a valley, you're looking down a ridge line, you're looking, you can observe, and you can got some time to think, and you can get some cover and think, okay, I think this is where they are. Let me take another look. You can pop your head out, you can assess. And he just looked at me and he said, in Ramadi, you had to make a decision now. And I started laughing, because that there's no distance. The person is across the street. The person is 2 buildings away. And you, as a leader, or even not as a leader, as a shooter, you got to make a decision right now. As a matter of fact, the leader's not going to tell you what to do. You get engaged from across the street. You're not going to wait for the leader to tell you what to do. You got to know what to do. You got to act. And that intensity of urban combat, and again, this is like when we talk about the Chechen War and what those guys, that's what was so stressful, and those lessons learned where they said, hey, in the urban combat environment, these guys need to be cycled out of the urban combat environment, because the ID threat, because the sniper threat, because the immense pressure of having to make decisions now, they should be cycled out, like I think it was every 2 months, and here we were, I'm putting you guys out in the field for 6 straight months into an urban combat. Apologize, Leif. Apologize to you bruiser guys. Damn hard.
We loved it.
But so that, and
let's
that's
go back.
And that's what these cops are dealing with. That's what these police officers are dealing with, is they got to get practice and rehearse making these decisions now, because that's what they have to do. So now what can you do to buy yourself an extra quarter second, an extra half a second? Well, don't stand out in the open. Create some distance. Why are you approaching the person? Ask yourself why. Well, I mean, where's this guy? Is he going to run from me? If he runs, what's going to happen? Is he going to become more of a threat, less of a threat? So you can make those decisions. Another piece of this: citizens of America. I think we actually need to teach in high school, in 9th grade freshman classes. I think there needs to be a class called How to Get Arrested by the Police. And they tell you what you should do when you get pulled over by the police, or you get told to get down by the police, or you get told to get away from the wall by the police. You know what you do? You do it. You do it. That's what you do. You show them your hands. You get your hands out of your pockets. You put your hands in the air. And you know what part of that class should be? Is the students that are going through the class get to be the cop and get to use simunition, get to feel what it's like to know, to not know when you pull this guy over, what's he going to do to you? And I watched a video the other day. They did a great job. Somebody suckered me in on the internet on YouTube. It was, watch another horrible police brutality. It's like some kind of title like that. And I'm watching it, and this guy that's in the car. So it's traffic stop, and the guy that's in the car is being totally compliant. And I'm like, oh, God, I can't believe this cop is going to do anything to this guy. Look at this guy. He's getting his license like he was asked to. I'm like, oh, I could barely watch it, because it's like another shooting. That was the title. Another shooting, another death. Because I always think those things are horrible to watch. So I'm watching, I'm waiting for this cop just to pull out his gun or see a quick movement and pull out his gun and shoot the guy. And the guy's just being compliant and nice, and reaches in to grab something, grab his wallet or whatever, pulls out a gun and shoots the gut shots the cop. Gut shoots the cop, busts out of the car and runs. Totally caught me by surprise. So when you are getting arrested, and we need to educate the citizens of America on how to get arrested. And I think that would be very helpful. Instead of protesting the cops for shooting people, they should say, okay, what can we do? We should take some ownership of this. What can we do as citizens to do a better job of getting arrested? You know, be compliant, show your hands. That is, and again, I think it's important to understand the pressure that police are under. And hey, just so everybody knows, some of those videos that I watch, I know it's horrible, and the police have taken shots that have made my stomach turn because they've been a nightmare. I already described one of these on the podcast, but that one where I saw the guy with the headphones on and a hoodie on, couldn't hear what the cop was saying, reached into his pocket to turn off his iPhone, and the cop drilled him. Right. You know, where was the cop standing? He was standing out in the wide open of a 7-Eleven parking lot. So he has no cover, no concealment. He's yelling at this guy. The guy turns around, wants to shut off his iPhone where he's listening to music so he can hear what the cop is saying. Cop drills him. And the call was, guy with a gun. So I understand the anger at police when police make bad shots. But let's figure out we just talked about this. Let's not be temperamental about it. Let's not use rage. That's not going to solve the problem. What is going to solve the problem is take a step back. Let's analyze what we can do as citizens to de-escalate all these situations.
Yeah, man, that's a good idea right there about let the, your example was high school, but let the citizen know how it feels to be the cop. Because really, that's all you see, because the cop has all this power, and all this stuff. But they don't know. I think when they see that kind of stuff, they don't know because of the emotions that get invoked when they see it. So if they understand, that's like a two-way street to facilitate that learning process. So let's say that was a common thing. That was one of like a normal thing. One of the normal things.
What was a common thing?
To people to go through this training. And that was just kind of part of our culture, where as a citizen, we're well aware of what cops go through and all this stuff because we've been through it and we understand. We just totally understand. That would make the whole landscape of cop versus citizen, or cops working alongside with citizens, it would stick out like a sore thumb when someone was suspicious.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, people would be just, I know exactly what to do. It'd be like clockwork, routine.
And myself, I've done vehicle interdiction over in Iraq, and I know what it's like to walk up those cars and see what those people are looking like. And so when I get pulled over by the cops, which hasn't happened to me a lot, but speed, I've gotten busted for speeding. I'm sorry, citizens of America, but I've gotten pulled over. I'm totally
discipline equals freedom.
Yeah, yep. Totally. Just hands, very slow movements. I don't. I want to make their job as easy as possible, easy as possible, because I know they're stressed. Hey, officer, how you doing? Sorry, I was going a little fast. What do you want from me?
Yeah,
I'm here to comply.
On that note, too, I mean, of course, they're gonna be police that don't make good decisions and maybe go over the top, or maybe they lost their cool for some other issue, or they get a call. I mean, often, and this is kind of where I was going when I was talking about this earlier, was if they get a call, like I saw an armed guy, or you fit the description of someone you're looking for, they're already seeing you as a threat. So having that, if you feel like you're not getting, and believe me, this is always the kind of myth in our culture as well. I'm about as a white boy as you can get, as a blonde-headed, pale-skinned guy. I've been mistreated by the police, that's for sure. And when that was happening, when I got shoved on the ground, a little short-barrel shotgun jammed into my skull, even when I was being compliant, I didn't lose my cool, because what does that gain me? I'm not going to resist arrest. I gotta suck that up. Then I can, if you want, I'm going to complain about my rights later. I can do that. Now, look, I was being a knucklehead as a young, as a young guy back in the day, but and I probably deserved to be roughed up. But it was one of those things where then now's not the time to complain about it. You cooperate with the police. You want to file a complaint later, you can do that.
Yes.
Yeah, and that typically ends up to be, I guess it's debatable, I guess, but that typically becomes the best discourse, because at the time, if a cop or whoever, I used to be a bouncer, so it's on a way lower level, it's kind of the same thing.
I remember those days, Echo. I think you had to bounce me out of the bar a few times, right?
Yeah. probably. But if you start taking it right then and there, where you're losing your temper or something like that, making the job difficult, like just like you said, like you're not gonna recapture your rights at that time. Like if you think your rights are being violated, you're not gonna get your rights back at that time. The ones that are being violated.
Let me say something worse than that. You have a rookie cop that doesn't know what he's doing that well, and he, for whatever reason, decides he's going to take that shotgun off safe.
Right.
Or he decides he's going to put the finger on the trigger, and now you start jerking around and moving, and all of a sudden you got an accidental discharge into your head.
Right.
So
that's not real beneficial.
It's not beneficial for life.
But even before it gets to that, think about just the person who's going to make the decision to either resist or put up a fight about their rights, or or this officer being having a power trip or whatever. Just think about that person's decision making, right? Rather, as opposed to, we're going to let this happen. I'm going to cooperate fully, regardless of your power trip or regardless of the rights that you violated or whatever. And then if I believe that my rights are violated, to pursue it later, like how you're saying. So, because if you choose to pursue it right then and there, it's not going to work out.
And actually, now I'm sitting here thinking about this. It doesn't need to be like a high school education thing. That'd be great. But like, what could we do in the immediate? The government, the police should get together and start making videos of saying, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what the cop's feeling. Here's what the cop's thinking. Watch this live. There's plenty of body cams now. You could say, here's what the cop's thinking. Here's what, like, they just had a shooting of a white guy up in Northern California a little bit ago. And he, they showed him reaching behind him after he was being combative and walking towards people. So it would be cool to just freeze that frame and say, this is what a police officer is thinking right now when you're doing this. He's thinking, does this guy have a gun? Here's the report that I got. Here's the situation I'm in. Think about what you're doing and do the right thing. If you're getting told to get down, get down. If you're getting told to show your hands, show your hands. And I think we got to start educating. We got to start training our police better. They deserve it. We owe that to them so that they know how to work as an individual to use cover, as pairs to use cover and move, as elements to use cover and move. And then we need to put them in the stressful, realistic environments that are changing all the time, that they have to learn how to think now. And then on the civilian side, our civilians need to be educated as well on how to get arrested, how to comply, what it feels like to be on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And like I said, I think that does create this kind of this overall understanding of the process. Like, I remember I used to be a bouncer, and it's like check IDs, right? You check IDs, and when someone has a fake ID, usually you can tell in their behavior. And I'm not saying I can tell a guy's underage or whatever. Absolutely. If their behavior, I'm not saying that, but if there's some suspicion or whatever, his behavior is going to tell more of the tale, But there is this kind of standard operating kind of way when you present your ID. You show your ID, you be quiet, and you just kind of stand there so they can look at your face, the bouncer. I'm just saying that's typically what people do automatically. But when people do other things, it sticks out, So like I said, I think like how you were saying, if there is this understanding, like I know how it is to be the cop, I know how to get arrested, they'll do that. And they'll create this pattern, like I said, where when they are acting suspicious, it won't be he was just kind of generally suspicious. It'll stick out way more.
Exactly.
That's a good idea, man. I don't think I ever heard that before.